Chapter 2, The Curse of the Pharaoh, Part 1, 665 BC Memphis. The news hit High Priest Shardem like an atom bomb exploding. How could this be their divine ruler? Their pharaoh had been taken away from them in a cruel twist of faith. Necho first had died a heroic death, fighting alongside his people, his warriors defending the holy lands of Egypt from the tyrant invaders, the Kushites, and their all-conquering leader, King Tantanami. A dark cloud had descended all across Egypt from Memphis to Cairo, as its people began to mourn the passing of their pharaoh. For the moment, their aggressor's advancement had been halted in its track, but success on the battlefield had come with the ultimate cost: death. Little was known about the faith of Necho, first rightful heir Psamtik, his oldest son. Had he perished in battle alongside his father? Was he a prisoner of the Kushites, or had the gods of Egypt aided him in finding a path of safety? Psamtik faith, unknown to most, hung in the balance, but for now more pressing issues had gripped the consciousness of Shardem. Word of mouth had reached his residence that the 4 governing high priests of Memphis, himself included, were now to meet at the temple of Haut-Kapta, as plans began in essence for the passage of deceased Pharaoh Necho first to Aaru. This would be the first pharaoh's funeral that Shardem would preside over, as his ascension to the role of high priest had only happened in the last 5 years. However, Shardem knew he had the guidance of Nimlot, the most experienced of his fellow high priests, to who Shardem, Ramosi, and Irsu would confide in to go about delivering on the sacred ritual. Necho first wishes depicted that his sarcophagus be made of solid gold to symbolize his importance not only to the people of Memphis, where he governed from, but for the entirety of the nation of Egypt. Necho's first final resting place would be in the hills of Daphne, a holy site not far from Memphis, where it was depicted an eternal pathway of light lay from the top of the mountain to the afterlife, for only pharaohs righteous enough to make the trek. Alanya Sadiki Shardem. Same goes to you too, my friend Ramos. The gods of Egypt are angry at us. Even now I feel the breath of Osiris hissing in the wind, remarked Shardem, as he and Ramos stood beside each other, shivering against the backdrop of a cold, brisk wind that had descended from the mountains. The wind had engulfed the city of Memphis, as temperatures plummeted late at night, as both men stood outside the temple of Haut-Kapta, waiting for the arrival of Irsu, and more importantly, Nimlot. Necho died a warrior's death defending us from those tyrants. He will surely transcend from this world to become a god of Egypt in time. But he has left us in a most vulnerable position, noted Ramos. It was his time. Who are we to question the ruling of the gods? Repent, or Horus will bring hardship to you and your loved ones for speaking such blasphemy, replied a startled Shardem, taken back by the outspoken nature of his fellow high priest. Shardem, fear not, my friend. I only speak what the common man thinks. Who knows what became of Psamtik, whether he still walks these eternal lands, or has he also been taken from us? Stated Ramrose, a solemn look of discontent written across his face, as he raised his shawl over his nose to stop the cold air engulfing his lungs. You must have faith in Ra, my friend. His love for Egypt has brought us through darker times than this. It is now that our faith is being tested the most, and we must act as a united force for the people of Egypt and show solidarity and one voice with one message, added Shardem. I see Nimlot and Irsu coming in the distance. I wish they could move that bit faster before I freeze where I stand, sighed Ramrose as he struggled to keep warm in the dark of the Arabian night. My camel would move faster than Nimlot, laughed Shardem, as the elderly figure of Nimlot, aided by Irsu, battled against the brisk wind to make their way to the entrance of the sacred temple. Nimlot approached a man of great age, embedded his facial appearance as wrinkles and scars lit up his face, not to mention his aging beard that was almost grayish in color. Nimlot gave off an aura of a man of great presence and authority as he stood from head to toe, decked out in noble garments. The noble garments of a high priest were essential in reflecting their connections to the gods and the pharaohs that resided over Egypt. Aside from being a pharaoh, the position of being a high priest was a job of great royalty and value, and meant that all four men were powerful figures not only in Memphis, but throughout the entirety of Egypt. Nimlot strode with purpose, bypassing Shardam and Ramrose without ushering a single gesture to the entrance door of the temple, which contained the royal seal of access, to which only he had the set of keys to open. "My brothers, let us not waste a minute more and get inside before the elements do haste with our mortal bodies," instructed Nimlot, as the four high priests of Egypt made their way into the sacred temple for deliberation in safety, as outside the wind howled with vengeance as an almost certain sandstorm loomed in the offing. Inside the sacred, all four men removed their sandals and head wrappings and outer layers of their robes, as Irsu took it upon himself to light all the candles inside the four walls of the majestic temple, while Ramrose ignited a small furnace to bring warmth on a bitter night. Once the fundamentals were in place, Nimlot led the other high priests in a bout of prayers and offerings to the gods in return for seeking their guidance and wisdom, not only to govern over the funeral procession of Necho I, but also assistance in finding a successor. If indeed what all four men assumed deep down, that the rightful heir, Psamtik, was no longer in the land of the living. Nimlot rose from his knees, signaling that prayer time was over, and beckoned for his fellow high priests to rise to their feet and follow him over to a star-studded emerald table full of embedded jewels and hieroglyphics. The table was flanked by 4 chairs made of solid acacia wood, with carvings and depictions on all of its 4 legs. We will start with the arrangements of the construction of the tomb for Pharaoh Necho. First work will commence immediately with the target of 70 days window for completion. As we speak, the pharaoh's body is making its journey back to Memphis under armed protection and should arrive in the next 2 days. The pharaoh remains will lay here at the temple, where Irsu will look after the embalming process. The construction of the tomb will demand a labor force of 3,000 workers, while the materials can be sourced locally. All of the pharaoh's precious items, along with his wife, shall be enclosed in the tomb to accompany him to Aaru, along with 4 kilos of silver and gold that he can offer to gods. Those were his requests. Necho I has also requested a special shrine inside the tomb to be constructed to hold a special family jewel given to him by the chief lector Sanabis. Sanabis, as you all know, is the most powerful Heka in all of Egypt, and his sorcery knows no worldly end. It is very important to our departed pharaoh that his wishes are carried out exactly regards the shrine for the jewel. It is the pharaoh decree that Sanabis gives his final blessing of the jewel to ward off all evil perpetrators, so that the jewel can accompany Necho first to Aaru, proclaimed Nimlot, as the other high priests looked fazed by the task ahead. 70 days and 3,000 workers, such a project like that can never be carried out in such a short period of time. Daphne is rocky terrain. To make a tomb in the mountains with various chambers would require 100 days, stated a tense Ramrose. It is the wishes of our gods and our pharaoh we must make it work, if not bring in more workers or slaves to finish the construction ahead of time, declared Nimlot, casting aside the reservations made by Ramrose. Shardam, you will accompany me tomorrow to Daphne at dawn before the sun rises, and we will pick out the spot where the tomb will be located and constructed for our beloved pharaoh, instructed Nimlot as he rose from his chair before giving his final blessing. The meeting was now over, as all 4 high priests left the temple and scattered off in different directions, as not even a cricket sounded tonight in Memphis. The gods were angry, and its citizens remained indoors tonight of all nights. Shardam arrived back home to be greeted by his beloved wife Reisha, whose hug brought much-needed warmth to his body, while a quick glance to a nearby room saw his son Asar and his daughter Heru, smiling back at him. The house of the high priest was a more lucrative residence than the common Egyptian, but on nights like tonight, nothing could prevent the elements having its toe on all the citizens of Memphis, no matter what class or order of society one fell under. Asar and Heru were on the floor rolling around play wrestling with each other, as both laughed and giggled, unaware of the circumstances that had engulfed Egypt. Work would begin in earnest tomorrow for Shardam, but for now he would make time for those who mattered the most in his life, his family, a place of sanctuary and respite where he could cast his worries aside and forget about the hardships his people were facing and the looming threat of all-out invasion by the Kushites. Kushites, the dreaded word on the lips of every Egyptian, these locusts of an ebony race descending from Nubia, a civilization that matched Egypt in terms of wealth, power, and cultural development.